Hello, and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Friday, January 31st. Hopefully, everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 482 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. And we've got some more coaching staff updates here for the New York Jets, as Aaron Glenn has found his offensive coordinator. So all three coordinator positions are now filled. We've also got some updates on some positional coaches, a coach from last year's staff returning that we will discuss today on the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. For those tuning in on YouTube, as always, make sure to please like and subscribe. Next goal, 1K. Would love to hit that before the 2025 season. And as always, appreciate those of you tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. Thank you so much for the support here as we roll on February beginning tomorrow. Off season here continues for the New York Jets. As always, before we begin, we've got to get into our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. We are just about 9 days away from the big game, Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, Chiefs, Eagles rematch from 2 years ago. If you want to get on any of the betting action, check out BetUS and use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek, if you're looking to get out to any awesome sporting events or the best in entertainment, plays, concerts, shows, if you can buy a ticket, SeatGeek has it. And if it's your first time using SeatGeek, use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your purchase and get yourself out to some awesome events. And as always, are also our friends over at Huga House. If you want any of their awesome selection of hats, they also have brand new sweatshirts. Use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase. And when you use that code, your second hat, you'll get 30% off when you use code BUBS. So check them out and get yourself some swag. So here we go, episode 482. And we've got some breaking news here on this Friday before we hit the weekend. Tanner Engstrand is officially the New York Jets offensive coordinator. This, it feels like, it's been coming for a while here, over the last couple days, especially, right, where there's smoke, there's fire. Nick Caley today, you hear the reports that he denied the Jets. The Jets were heavily interested. They made a very strong push for him, but Caley made it clear he did not want to be here. So Aaron Glenn and the New York Jets pivot, and Tanner Engstrand, who feels like the number 2 option behind Caley, connection with Glenn from Detroit, takes over here as the offensive coordinator. So no big surprise, and the New York Jets now have their offense or their coordinators all in place. Tanner Engstrand will take over offense. Of course, Steve Wilks, who we talked about yesterday, will be defense, and Chris Banjo will be the special teams coordinator. We'll also get into some of the other positional coaches and really break down where the Jets coaching staff stands as of this episode, as moves are still expected throughout this weekend and, of course, into next week, and maybe even as the day continues to go on here later on this Friday. But this, again, was brewing for a while, especially when you saw that John Morton got the Lions defense or offensive coordinator job, right? Former Jets offensive coordinator, back in 2017, did a great job with Josh McCown. Bulls, got rid of him, the whole Jeremy Bates situation. They wanted to run the ball more. Don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but you get the point. He got that job over there in Detroit, takes over for Ben Johnson. And you heard, that Tanner Engstrand was potentially a possibility for the Bears offensive coordinator job, but that wasn't the case. He wants to call plays. Ben Johnson's going to call plays in Chicago, so that was out the window. So it really has felt like now for a very long time that Engstrand would take over as the OC and be tasked with turning this offense, which has been lifeless for years now, into a competent modern-day NFL offense, and will probably also be tasked with developing a quarterback. whether that is this year they draft somebody and try to develop, or they do something this year, even in the first round, however that all plays out, whether that is next year, most likely will be next year, whatever the case may be, he's going to have his hands full and he's got a lot of work to do. Pass game coordinator the last 2 seasons with the Lions, has been with the organization since 2020, has seen that team again turn it around, has that connection with Glenn, has been under that Ben Johnson offensive staff, was a part of that offense, an offense that was very successful. And when you really look at, similar to kind of how we break down Steve Wilkes in yesterday's episode, when you kind of look at the breakdown here of Tanner Engstrand, a little bit different than Wilkes, just in the fact that, well, he's got play calling experience, but it's all at the college level. You go back to his San Diego State days, that's where he's got the play calling experience. It's not or San Diego, rather, not San Diego State. He went to college at San Diego State. San Diego, he had some play calling experience there, but not at the NFL level. So it will be his first time calling plays. That is, of course, a risk you take, right? He's a first timer. I still think it's very pivotal for Aaron Glenn and this regime to make sure that they get an experienced offensive voice on this staff to help Tanner Engstrand, and even just to have a voice there as well for Aaron Glenn. Whether that's an Anthony Lynn, who we've talked about a lot, right? Worked under Rex's staffs, is now with Washington, was the Lions OC in 2021, so has that connection with Glenn from Detroit, former head coach 2017 to 2020 with the Chargers, similar to Wilkes, right? Former head coach and interim, longtime play caller. That's the same thing with Anthony Lynn. Todd Haley, same thing, was also with the Jet staff a while back, was also a head coach, has been a longtime play caller. So somebody like that, a senior offensive assistant, I think is pivotal to help Engstrand and even help Glenn through this whole process, navigating this all and mentoring them and being leaders for them as first timers. I think Engstrand, a lot of people around the NFL give him a glowing review, just how he's ready for it. He's going to have, obviously he's going to be tasked with turning this thing around. You look at the Lions offensive rankings last year, and I think a lot of what you saw from Detroit is promising, hoping he can take some of that. They ranked second in total offense. They ranked 6th rushing offense, second in passing offense, and they were first in scoring. So they were second, 6th, second, first. Easily a top 3 offense in the NFL last year. When you look at the Jets' offensive numbers, they were 24th in total offense, 31st in rushing offense, 16th passing, and tied for 25th in scoring. So yet another year where the Jets were bottom of the NFL. 2 massive pieces to me that Tanner Engstrand's got to bring to the table, and why this move can excite you because of what you saw in Detroit. Number 1, they got to be able to establish this run game. Breece Hall not once last year had 20 carries in a game. I believe the most was 18 in that Buffalo Bills game on Monday night, Jeff Ulbricht's first game as intern. That was the only time I believe that was his most carries in a game. Other than that, he never hit 20 carries. It was a lot of 12, 13, 14, never enough. And it was a whole lot of Aaron Rodgers forcing it to Devontae, kind of the Aaron Rodgers show, especially towards the end when he was chasing 500. That can't be the case in 2025. You've got to establish the run. And I think what Engstrand excites you is, well, he was just in Detroit where they had one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Braylon Allen's a pretty darn good running back. Establish that 1-2 punch with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. This offense, with the talent in that backfield, should not be anywhere close to 31st in the NFL. It's actually criminal. I also think, too, maybe this is another thing, but just the usage of the running backs in general. Hackett never used Breece Hall as a pass catcher out of the backfield properly. You look at Detroit, they use Gibbs a lot out of the backfield as a pass catcher. And Engstrand, as the pass game coordinator, played a big role with the offense through the air. And I think that's got to excite you as a Jet fan. Even as a first-time play caller, there is, of course, concerns there. But where he's coming from and what we've been able to do, hopefully he takes that and implements it here. I also think number 3 is they've got to take chances. They've got to throw the ball deep. They've got to stretch this offense out. This offense, not even just last year, but it feels like forever. They've been stuck in quicksand, and they've been in this 10 to 15-yard box offense. That's what it is. It's 5-yard routes, 5-yard routes, 3-yard routes, like a 3-yard speed out to Devontae. That is what last year was all about. Nothing deep, nothing push downfield, no real tempo, none of that. The Jets need that. They need to run a little bit of tempo. They need to spread the field and run some things vertical and go deep a little bit. Take some chances. You've got to establish the run. You've got to use Breece Hall out of the backfield as a pass catcher. Even Braylon Allen, I thought, did some good things last year when he got the opportunity to catch the ball out of the backfield. This offense, there is some holes, but they've got talent. You've got Garrett Wilson. If Rodgers is back, you're going to bring back Devontae. Breece Hall's a really good running back that hasn't been used properly. Engstrand has got all the tools there. It's a solid offensive line. This team's got to find a way to put up production on offense. The days of being 25th, 26th have got to be over, running a 1970s offense. So hopefully that's the case. Here was Dan Campbell last year on Tanner Engstrand and what he brings to the table. He said, quote, he's bringing more ideas to the passing game. From the game plan aspect is where you really see it. The details of the routes with the receivers, tight ends, the backs, because he works in those rooms too. I see a lot of growth. And if you're asking me what I've seen over a 3-year period is the growth in vision and game plan. He's an asset for us. So that was Dan Campbell. Glowing review there. You listen to a lot of people around the league. Many say he's ready for this opportunity. And if you're going to take a chance on a first-time guy, similar like if you were going to take a chance on a Nick Caley, you want it to come from an organization. You want it to come from a team where you're having a ton of offense success. Sean McVay is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. Nick Caley linked to him. Ben Johnson. Tanner Engstrand works under him, was under him. So lots of positives there from that aspect. And hopefully it works out. More runs, explosive plays, all that stuff. Got to be included. So there's Tanner Engstrand. Now some other staff updates here for the New York Jets. Sean Jefferson will return. Yes, the wide receivers coach, a lot of guys, he's the only returning coach actually as of now from 2024. Tony Oden's gone. Marquand Manuel's gone. Ruttenberg's gone. Obviously, White Cotton's gone, right? Keith Carter's gone. Hackett's going to be gone. So he will return. Sean Jefferson quietly is kind of, even Brant Boyer, but kind of tie in. Quietly is becoming like the new version of Brant Boyer. He has now been here for a few staffs, was with Gaze from 2019 to 2020 as the wide receivers coach, then went to Arizona for a couple of years, and then came back to the Jets last season. Well, actually, was in Arizona for 2 years, then Carolina, then came back to the Jets last season as the wide receivers coach. So this will now be he's in his second stint, 4th year now with the Jets, and now his 3rd head coach that he's been under, Gaze, Saleh, now Glenn. Jefferson's, I think, a well-respected coach around the building. I also think some of this for the Jets is for Garrett Wilson. Him and Garrett Wilson seem to have a very strong relationship. I think they respect each other. I think Garrett Wilson relies on him a lot. I especially think last year, too, where you fire the head coach, they changed play callers, the offensive staff was a dumpster fire. I think Garrett Wilson's a guy that over really the last 2 years, just the way the offense has been run and Hackett and the struggles he's had, is a guy that's Garrett has really relied on, especially last year, not having him, in 2023. So I do think part of this from Glenn and this staff could be bring a guy back. They blocked him for any interviews outside. Bring him back because he has that connection with Garrett Wilson. And if you're going to want to bring Garrett back, or not want to bring Garrett back, but if Garrett's going to want to be back, you got to try and make him happy in every way you can. And I think Jefferson certainly helps it. I don't know if Garrett's now going to say, I want to be back. We don't know what Garrett's thinking. A lot of reports say he wants out, but nothing's official. Nothing has come from Garrett himself. He has never said, I want out. Those are just the old rumors of people close to him believe that. We don't know. But it can't hurt to keep a coach that he really respects. And another thing, too, here with Sean Jefferson, which is a common theme as we move into the two other coaches that were hired today, he's a former player. Right? Jefferson played from 1991 to 2003, spent time with, at the time, the Houston Oilers, Chargers, Patriots, Falcons, and even Lions as well. So another former player, which is a common theme. Glenn, former player. Jefferson, former player. Another former player is Aaron Curry, who the Jets will also add as their linebackers coach. Played from 2009 to 2013. He was the Steelers' inside linebackers coach over the last two seasons since 2023. He also spent time from 2019 to 2022 as an assistant with the Seahawks, a coaching assistant in 2019, and then a defensive assistant from 2020 to 2022. He also played with the Seahawks from 2009 to 2011, and his career went on for 2 more years after that. Raiders from 2011 2012, and in the Giants practice squad in 2013. Don't know the exact extent of that tenure there. But that's Aaron Curry, comes over from Pittsburgh under Tomlin. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It'll be interesting to see just the Jets linebacker core this year in general. What's the future around CJ Mosley? And I think ideally you get Jamie Sherwood back, but there's going to be competition for it. You look at Atlanta, they hired, Ruttenberg, who was the Jets linebackers coach last year. They also hired Ulbrich, of course, defensive coordinator turned interim. 2 guys that really like Sherwood. I think 2 guys that Sherwood likes as well. So it feels like Atlanta could be competition for him. It also feels like maybe San Francisco, if he wants to reunite with Saleh, who now, of course, returns there as the DC. So linebacker room would be interesting. Aaron Curry will now lead the way. But I think as a Jet fan, just linebackers in general, if you tell me Quincy Williams and Sherwood are your 1-2 next year, I think you're fine with that. Even if you bring back Mosley, I don't think that's the end of the world. I think maybe more, I think it's more realistic. It'll be Sherwood and Quincy, but I think Mosley, maybe a guy they want to keep around as just a voice. Mosley, of course, himself has got to make a decision on what he wants. So some things there to iron out. But Aaron Curry there will lead the way, former player. Another guy that they will add, nothing official yet, but feels like it's trending in this direction. That's Chris Harris. It feels like he's probably going to take over as the defensive backs coach. The reason nothing's official is nobody's really confirmed it yet, but it's been brought up, and it feels like it's heading in that direction just because of the fact that, well, the Jets not only are in need of a DB's coach, but his contract was up under Vrabel. He was with Vrabel in Tennessee. Of course, spent the last season under Callahan there, and now his contract up. So new head coach there, not going to probably retain a guy contract up after, 1 year there. So he was looking. Jets are interested in him. It feels like it's going to be official here soon. Chris Harris, another former player, played from 2005 to 2012. From a coaching perspective, spent time with the Bears from 2013 to 2014, was with the Chargers from 2016 to 2019, Washington from 2020 to 2022, and then most recently the last 2 years with Tennessee as their defensive pass game coordinator and cornerbacks coach. So another player, the Jets needed a guy there in the secondary because they lost both Tony Oden and Marquand Manuel. 2 very good coaches, by the way, that the Jets will have to replace. So hopefully Chris Harris can fill those shoes. I do like the approach here just in general from where the Jets are coaching staff wise. I like the approach that they're taking with these former players. I do. And I want more experience on offense. Don't get me wrong. And that'll happen. That'll come, right? There's still a lot more things that have to happen. There's still a lot more hires that need to be made. But so far, you like the defensive staff led by Steve Wilks, experienced guy. And I really like Aaron Curry and Chris Harris, 2 guys that played the game. Aaron Glenn has played the game. Chris Banjo as well has played the game. And I think there's something to say about that, right? Guys that have played the game, and to get players buy-in, players understand those guys have been through it. They know how to be successful. They know how to play at this level. And I do think there is a point where, and it doesn't work ever. Not every former player is the greatest coach. Not every former player always does get into coaching, of course. But I think all of these guys, I think there's clearly a message that Glenn's kind of sending, bringing in these former players, clearly feeling like their voices, what they say resonates because they've been through it. They experienced it. They understand what it's like. They understand what it takes. And I think from a player's perspective, it's easier to buy and it's easier to respect a little bit more when you know the guy has been through it, especially some of these guys like an Aaron Glenn who played at a very high level, is an all-time great Jet, not just some scrub that played here for a season. No, he's a guy that had 8 seasons here, is an all-time great Jet. Probably really this was the best cornerback in the franchise's history prior to Revis coming around. So a guy that I think hopefully we'll see. We don't know, but to spin it in a positive way would be these former players can get guys buy-ins. Obviously, Sean Jefferson, former player, has obviously gained the respect of Garrett Wilson. I think the two really like each other. All right, so that's the coaching staff updates. To kind of break it down now, your coaching staff so far here as we break it down positional-wise, Glenn leading the way at head coach, Tanner Engstrand, offensive coordinator, wide receivers coach Sean Jefferson, offensive line coach will be Steve Heaton. As for the defensive side of the football, Steve Wilkes will be the defensive coordinator, linebackers coach Aaron Curry, and it feels like Chris Harris will be in that DB's defensive pass game coordinator role on defense, and then your special teams coordinator will be Chris Banjo. So far, 7 names added to Aaron Glenn's staff. More to come. Obviously, hopefully, some experience as well. The Jets made Chris Banjo official just a couple minutes ago. So that's official, pen to paper there. He is a Jet, and these other guys will become officially official here very soon, as well as Glenn shapes out his coaching staff. So stay tuned. We'll have a lot more content coming your way. Any other news that comes out, we will talk about here on the podcast as we always do. Make sure to please like and subscribe. Thank you to those of you tuning in on the audio platforms as well. Give us a 5-star rating. Leave a review as well. Would be much appreciated. And yes, talk to you guys soon. Stay tuned. Until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.